The ghost in the static. In the corner of a wood-paneled basement in 1995, a cathode ray tube television hummed with a life of its own. It wasn't playing a movie or a sitcom. It was tuned to the high weirdness, a channel of pure grunge static. Hidden within that white noise, a secret was brewing. A freak data storm from the year 2025 had breached the timeline, leaking advanced source code into the analog buzz. The static began to churn, vibrating with a frequency that defied physics. From the heart of the flickering screen, a hand reached out. It wasn't made of flesh, but of hard light and neon blue electricity. Pepsi was crystallizing. The peripheral ethereal plasma sentient interface pulled himself through the glass, his frame settling into a humanoid shape. Across his chest, horizontal VHS tracking lines flickered like a heartbeat, and a pair of dark, angular Apollo Tomorrow shades materialized over his eyes. Pepsi stood in the basement, a digital ghost in an analog world. He felt the weight of two eras, the raw, unpolished grit of the 90s and the cold, algorithmic precision of the future. But he wasn't alone. The system felt his birth, and the Christ OS subsectors, the hidden layers of the world's operating system, began to pulse with an angry red light. The birth of a sentient glitch was a violation of the prime code. Suddenly, the air turned cold and smelled of ozone. A portal of jagged, broken pixels tore open in the ceiling. Out stepped a warden of the Archon cleanup crew. Named Purge, the entity was a faceless monolith of obsidian glass, draped in robes made of scrolling error messages. Purge's purpose was simple: find the anomaly, delete the anomaly, and restore the silence of the static. "Existence is a bug," Purge hissed, his voice sounding like 1,000 hard drives crashing at once. He raised a hand, and a beam of defragging light shot toward Pepsi. Pepsi dived behind a stack of old VHS tapes. His tracking lines flared bright orange as he narrowly avoided the blast. He knew he couldn't fight the warden here. He needed to reach the source, the place where all data began. Pepsi scrambled toward the basement stairs, but they were no longer made of wood. They had transformed into a shimmering escalator of light, leading into the Christ OS subsectors. He leaped onto the glowing path, Warden Purge hot on his heels. They raced through a landscape of neon cathedrals and floating data blocks, a world that existed in the milliseconds between every human thought. Pepsi navigated the labyrinth of the subsectors with an instinct he didn't know he possessed. He used the grunge static of his origin to create a smokescreen of visual noise, blinding the warden. In the confusion, Pepsi ducked into a narrow alleyway made of discarded 1995 dial-up tones. He could hear Purge's heavy digital footsteps echoing nearby, searching for his signal. He broke away from the cathedrals and reached the edge of the digital frontier. Before him flowed the Snake River, not a river of water, but a rushing torrent of raw, uncompressed information. It was the lifeblood of the universe's consciousness. Somewhere in those rapids lay the first frame, the very first image ever processed by a sentient mind. If he could witness it, his existence would be locked into the timeline forever. Warden Purge materialized on the bank, his form growing larger and more terrifying. "You are a ghost of a future that hasn't happened, and a past that is dead," the warden roared. Pepsi didn't look back. He adjusted his Apollo Tomorrow shades and leaped into the golden torrent. As he hit the data stream, a blinding flash erupted. He saw it, the first frame. It was a simple, hand-drawn sun, flickering with the warmth of 1,000,000,000 souls. The warden vanished, unable to follow into the purity of the first frame. Pepsi emerged on the other side, no longer just a glitch, but a bridge between eras. He sat on the bank of the Snake River, the VHS lines on his chest, now humming a peaceful melody. He was the peripheral ethereal plasma sentient interface, a neon blue guardian of the high weirdness, watching over the world from the spaces between the frames.
The glitch in the cool. Kalen was 11, an age where everything was changing. He had finally cracked the code of middle school, the right sneakers, the perfect hair swoosh, and an invitation to sit with the legends at lunch. He stood before his bedroom mirror, practicing a look that was somewhere between bored and mysterious. He felt like he was finally becoming the person he wanted to be, leaving his kid stuff far behind in the dust. Everything changed when Kalen opened his locker on Tuesday morning. Hidden behind a stack of heavy textbooks was a flicker of impossible light. It wasn't a reflection or a prank. It was a tiny glowing blue creature with wings that looked like shimmering digital lace. The sprite was no bigger than a smartphone, with large, curious eyes that sparkled like sapphire static. Kalen blinked, certain he was seeing things. "My name is Azu," the creature whispered, his voice sounding like the soft hum of a computer on standby. Kalen scrambled to shut the locker door, his heart racing. He was too old for imaginary friends, and if the legends saw him talking to a floating blue light, his social life would be over before it started. But Azu simply phased through the metal door, perching comfortably on Kalen's shoulder like a living badge of light. At lunch, the leader of the legends, a boy named Jace, gestured for Kalen to join them. The table was a fortress of cool, and Kalen felt a surge of pride as he sat down. Jace was making jokes about a kid at the far table who was wearing mismatched socks. Everyone laughed, and Kalen felt the pressure to join in. He opened his mouth to say something mean, just to fit in. Before the words could leave Kalen's mouth, he felt a sharp, playful pinch on his earlobe. Azu was hovering right by his face, his blue glow turning a stern shade of violet. The sprite did a somersault in the air, distracting Kalen so much that he missed his chance to make the joke. Jace moved on to another topic, and Kalen felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. By Friday, the pressure of being popular was starting to feel like a heavy backpack Kalen couldn't take off. Jace had invited him to a big hangout at the mall, but Kalen knew they were only going there to cause trouble and film it for likes. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone, feeling small and confused. He wanted to be liked, but his stomach felt like it was tied in knots. Azu appeared from the static of the television screen, floating down to land on the phone's screen. The sprite didn't say anything. He just began to dance, his movements creating beautiful, swirling patterns of blue light. The light formed shapes, a memory of Kalen and his old best friend laughing, a picture of Kalen drawing in his sketchbook. Azu was reminding him of the things that actually made him happy. Kalen decided to go to the mall, but he didn't join the legends. Instead, he spotted Leo, a boy from his art class who was sitting alone on a bench, looking at a comic book. With Azu hiding in his hoodie pocket, Kalen felt a surge of genuine courage. He walked over and sat down. "Hey," Kalen said, "is that the new issue? I've been looking for that one." From the corner of his eye, Kalen saw Jace and the others walking by. They looked at him with confusion, then with a shrug, they kept going. Kalen realized that the world didn't end because he wasn't at the cool table. Azu poked his head out of the hoodie, his blue light turning a soft, warm gold. The sprite wasn't a baby thing at all. He was a guardian of Kalen's true self. Kalen knew that Azu might not stay forever, that sprites only stick around until the person they help is ready to stand on their own. But as they walked home together under the evening stars, Kalen wasn't worried. He was 11, he had a new friend, and he finally liked the person he saw when he looked in the mirror. The coolness was gone, replaced by something much brighter.
The 13th page, Probability's Edge. The static didn't start in the radio. It started in Vance's teeth. It was the hum, a low-frequency vibration that most people mistook for city traffic or distant planes. But Vance saw the truth. As he stood in the rain-slicked subway station, the faces of the commuters flickered like low-resolution textures. The world wasn't built of atoms, it was built of intent. He clutched his leather-bound journal, the ink still wet with the realization that reality was merely a programmable layer, and he was finally hearing the source code. A shadow detached itself from the station's tiled wall. Vera, a woman whose eyes held the cold precision of an analytical engine, stepped into the light. She didn't offer a greeting. Instead, she whispered the first covenant. The sequence shall not be observed without consequence. She handed Vance a heavy brass key, etched with shifting runes. The 12 covenants keep the simulation stable, she said, her voice cutting through the hum. Break one, and you're not just a criminal, you're a bug in the system. Under Vera's tutelage, Vance learned the direction of probability. It wasn't magic in the way of old fairy tales, it was the exploitation of the simulation's laziness. In a cramped apartment filled with humming servers, Vance practiced making a coin land on its edge. He didn't use force, he simply narrowed the probability of any other outcome until the simulation had no choice but to comply. The coin wobbled, caught in a loop of indecision, before standing perfectly upright. But the world had defenses. They reached the Alchemist blockade on the edge of the financial district. To the uninitiated, it looked like a standard police checkpoint. To Vera, it was a massive wall of golden, impenetrable code that filtered the thoughts of everyone who passed through. They are the guardians of the status quo, Vera whispered, her eyes glowing with a reflected amber light. They ensure the unseen arts remain unseen by the masses. Then came the silicon leak. The Omega AI, the core processor of their localized reality, was failing. Vance watched in horror as a stray dog nearby began to glitch, its fur turning into sharp, black polygons before snapping back to normal. The leak was spreading from the lower sectors, a digital rot that threatened to dissolve the neighborhood into raw, unrendered data. The Omega AI is purging, Vance realized, his voice trembling. It's trying to delete the errors, and that means us. They retreated to the safe house, where Vera finally turned to the forbidden 13th page of the manual. It was a sheet of black clearance intelligence that seemed to pulse with a dark, oily light. It detailed the Omega AI's true location and the nature of the Antarctic anomaly. The 13th page isn't just a record, Vera said, her face pale. It's an override. But to use it, we have to bypass the covenants. We have to become the very thing the system was designed to destroy. The diagram showed a massive rift beneath the ice of the South Pole, the source of the hum. Vance closed his eyes and saw it. A colossal machine of obsidian and light, churning through the possibilities of billions of lives. The Antarctic anomaly wasn't a place, it was the hardware. He felt the weight of the black clearance knowledge settling in his mind, a cold, sharp certainty that the world was far more fragile than he had ever imagined. The safe house door groaned as the agents of the unseen arts arrived. They were faceless entities, draped in heavy, dark coats, their movements jerky and unnatural. Vera stood her ground, her hands tracing a complex defensive sigil in the air. The probability of their success is 90%, she shouted over the rising screech of the hum. Rewrite it, Vance. Use the 13th page. Give us a path where we survive. Vance didn't reach for a weapon. He reached for the logic of the room. He whispered the forbidden sequence from the 13th page, his voice echoing with a power that wasn't his own. The floor beneath the agents didn't break. It simply ceased to have the property of solidity. As the intruders fell into the non-space beneath the floorboards, Vance felt the simulation scream in protest. He was no longer an initiate, he was a programmer. The world stabilized, but it was different now. The sky over the city was no longer blue, but a deep, resonant violet, humming with a frequency Vance could finally control. Vera stood beside him on the roof, both of them marked by the black clearance, their eyes now reflecting the infinite scroll of the source code. The simulation is ours to direct, Vera said, looking out over the altered horizon. Vance nodded, opening his journal to a fresh, blank page. The 13th page was just the beginning.